A stray cat sneaked into the room of a billionaire who had been in a coma for 3 months. What happened next left the doctors frozen in shock. They couldn't believe their eyes. He went where even the best doctors couldn't reach. With just one touch from the cat, activity appeared on the monitors, something that hadn't happened in 90 long days. When the guard in the emergency room moved away for a minute, a red shadow flashed in the corridor, so quiet and impetuous that no one would have noticed it if it were not for the barely audible claw-claw on the tiled floor. Homeless. The cat, thin, emaciated, with shabby hair and one torn ear, walked as if he knew exactly where. His gait was cautious but confident, as if he could smell or call that only animals could hear. He has long learned to survive in the city, to rummage through garbage cans, to hide from yard dogs, to avoid people. With a heavy step. But today it seems that something has changed in him. He did not go for food or warmth. He moved like a creature to whom someone quietly said, "Go." The corridors of the hospital were bright, cold, alien. There was a smell of bleach and medicines. The air was dry, and the sound of each of its slush echoed. But the cat was not afraid. He slipped past the nurse pushing a cart with sheets, hiding behind her dressing gown, and then under the bench when a group of doctors were discussing something in a sharp, serious tone. Not a single person paid attention to the little redhead. A creature, though if anyone had looked closely, he would have been surprised at its calmness. The cat moved smoothly, as if it was part of this place. He approached the doors of the intensive care unit. Here the security was strict, but fate seemed to play along with him. At that moment, the orderly, taking out the gurney, forgot to close it. Door. The cat, taking the chance, slipped inside without making a single sound. It was quieter inside than anywhere else in the hospital. Cars, flickering lights, even sounds of monitors, everything created an atmosphere of strange peace, where time seemed to slow down. He stopped at the ward with a sign Alexander Vetrov. Those letters didn't tell him anything. He didn't know that this name hadn't come from the news in recent months, that the person lying inside was a billionaire. The owner of a hotel empire, a man around whom money, power and intrigue revolved. None of this mattered to Cowdy. He stopped because he felt something subtle warmth, not physical, but mental, something very familiar, almost homely. He meowed softly, weakly, as if asking if he could enter. The door was ajar. The cat squeezed inside and froze. The room was spacious but empty. Snow-white walls, the smooth mechanical sound of a heart monitor, a lamp that softly illuminates the face of a man on the bed. Alexander looked as if he was not alive, but frozen. Gray hair is scattered on the pillow, his hands lie motionless, his skin is almost transparent. Tubes, wires, devices. Everything said that the man had been here for a long time, that he did not react to anything. That he is in a world where no one can reach. The cat slowly approached. He looked attentively at the patient's face, for a long time, almost studying, as if he saw something in it that others had missed. Then, gathering himself, he jumped on a chair, then on the edge of the bed. Under his paws, the mattress bent slightly, but not a single device did not squeak anxiously. He walked over to the man's motionless hand and sniffed it. The smell was pungent, medicine, metal, cold. But through all this, the cat felt weakness, emptiness, and loneliness so deep that it seemed to draw to itself. He slowly touched his hand with his nose. This moment was barely noticeable, so tiny that anyone could consider it an accident. But for the cat and, perhaps, for Alexander himself, it was a touch of life. The man moved his fingers slightly, almost imperceptibly. For a fraction of a second. But this was enough for the cat to understand that more was needed. He rubbed his head against his palm, gently, carefully, as if he wanted to warm it up. Then he lay down next to him, curled up in a dense red ball. His warm body pressed against the cold skin, and he began to purr. Quiet, low, deep. A purr that vibrated throughout her chest spread across the bed. Like a weak wave of heat. And outside the door of the ward, a line of brain activity began to slowly grow on the observation screen for the first time in months. In the afternoon, the shift to the intensive care unit entered its usual rhythm. Doctors checked the indicators, nurses changed IVs, nurses quietly moved along the corridors. Everything was going calm, measured beating of devices until one of the nurses, Irina, glanced at the monitor of ward number 14. For a moment, her face frowned. The graphs looked different. Not alarming, not dangerous, but just more alive than usual. She leaned closer, clicked a couple of settings, peered for a few seconds. Then she slowly raised her head and walked to the glass door of the room. What she saw made her eyes wide. On the billionaire's chest, between the wires and the neatly laid blanket, a red stray cat slept peacefully. He was warmed. Warm light of a table lamp and seemed surprisingly calm, as if he was lying not in intensive care, but by the fireplace in a cozy house. His paws were tucked in, his tail wrapped around itself in a ring, and his head rested right on Alexander Vetrov's hand, the same one that I was dead to the touch in the morning. Irina automatically looked at the monitor. The pulse is stable. The pressure is slightly higher than usual, but within normal limits. The most striking thing is the graph of brain activity. Over the past 2 hours, it has begun to rise slowly but surely. Not chaotically, not spasmodically, but evenly, smoothly, as if someone was carefully turning on the brain after months of silence. She cautiously entered the room, not wanting to frighten the animal. The cat opened his eyes, large, amber, attentive, and blinked softly, as if assessing whether she was a threat. But he did not run away, did not try to hide. He only pressed a little harder against the man's hand, as if protecting him. "Where did you come from, baby?" whispered Irina. She cautiously. "I came closer." The cat let out a soft, low purr, not stopping for a second. Irina knew a lot about animals. She herself kept 2 cats at home. "I knew that purring is a special vibration that can reduce stress, calm the heart, even stimulate tissue regeneration." But she never thought that she would see such a thing here, in the room of a hopeless patient. At that moment, the door opened abruptly. A young resident physician, Maria, ran in, holding printouts of tests in her hands. "Irina, have you seen these?" She paused, staring at the same scene. "Is it a cat?" "Cat," the nurse nodded. "How did he even get here?" "I have no idea." Irina sat down next to the bed. "But look," she pointed to the monitor. Maria approached, peering deeper and deeper. The indicators did not just improve. Alexander's body seemed to wake up from a long viscous sleep. The lungs began to work a little more actively, breathing became deeper, and the vessels reacted faster. Even the mimic muscles, those that usually completely turned off in patients in this state, sometimes trembled slightly. "It's impossible," whispered Maria, slowly sinking into her chair. 3 months without changes, and today. The cat suddenly raised its head and looked attentively at the man's face, and then, quite unexpectedly, slowly stretched out paw to his cheek, as if checking if he was there. Alexander's fingers twitched, but visibly trembled. Both women gave a cry of surprise. Maria instinctively grabbed the flashlight and quickly leaned over the billionaire. "Alexander Pavlovich, if you can hear me, try to blink." The air in the ward became dense, taut like a string. The cat froze, stopping purring. Irina, without noticing it, pressed her palm to her chest. The man lay motionless, but after a second, his eyelids trembled. One time. Barely noticeable, almost ghostly, but they trembled. The nurses and the doctor looked at each other as if they were afraid to believe it. The cat buried his head in his palm again, and purred. Continued even deeper, more equally, stronger. "We have to call the head doctor," whispered Maria, getting up. "It's not even a miracle, it's something else." But Irina did not leave. She looked at only one thing: how a man who had been in a world of silence for 3 months did a little more than take a deep breath. And like a red, homeless, useless cat, he became the one who hears life where people have stopped hearing. Long ago. 2 days after the cat first climbed onto the billionaire's bed, the intensive care unit was buzzing with conversations. The doctors, usually reserved and strict, looked at each other, whispered, studied printouts and recordings from surveillance cameras. But the most incredible thing happened quietly. without noise in room number 14. Alexander Vetrov was lying quietly as well, but he no longer looked like a man out of touch with reality. His breathing became confident. The muscles of the face sometimes barely moved, and the fingers sometimes seemed to try to squeeze something every time the cat was nearby. The red animal now did not leave his side for a minute. Someone brought him a bowl of food and water, someone laid a soft one. The fabric was next to it on the bed, but the cat still preferred one place. A man's chest or arm. There he purred, there he slept. There he warmed him with his small body, as if guarding him. The morning of the third day began unusually quietly. Even the instruments seemed quieter than usual. The cat slept with his paw on Alexander's arm. The light from the window fell evenly, softly, creating a feeling of home tranquility, which does not exist in a hospital. But at that moment, something changed. At first, a subtle movement of the fingers, then a slightly deeper inhalation. Then the trembling of the eyelids, as if a man was struggling, trying to rise from the depths where he had been for months. The cat jumped up first. He raised his head, peered into the man's face, and meowed softly, very softly, briefly, like a call. And it was at this second that Alexander opened his eyes. Unabruptly, not frightened, he just opened it. Like a man who has slept for a long time and is slowly returning to the world, his pupils trembled. At first they focused blurredly, and then clearly on the red lump next to them. The cat hummed softly again, this time pitifully and gently. Alexander tried to raise his hand, and although there was a movement, it was weak, almost weightless, and he touched the cat. With fingers that did not obey yet, but already remembered how it was. Felt warm. "Who are you?" he whispered hoarsely. These were the first words that the ward heard in 3 months. The door opened, Irina ran in, followed by Maria and 2 more doctors. When they saw that Alexander was looking at them meaningfully, and the cat was lying on his chest, as if holding him in this world, everyone froze. "Alexander Pavlovich," Maria asked cautiously. He nodded slowly. "Cat," he whispered, "don't put it away." The doctors looked at each other, but no one even thought to object. The cat, as if realizing that his mission was accomplished, gently licked the man with his finger and lay down again, relaxed. His purr was even, calm, almost solemn. From that moment on, no one doubted anymore. It was this little red-haired creature that brought the billionaire back to life. And when a week later Alexander was already confidently talking to the doctors, the first thing he asked for was simple. "Draw up the documents. This cat is mine, and I want to take him home." So the homeless redhead became a spark with the park, which ignited life where even hope had long been extinguished.